So by telling them to be open, on the Enlightenment, explaining the Enlightenment format, I've used this term open. It's a very primitive word in English, and if people don't understand open, there's not any word you're going to do any better with. When I teach yoga, I call it surrender. But when I teach enlightenment, I call it open. And I think you'll have more luck with it using that term. People will sometimes ask you, what do you mean by open? Just the ordinary, everyday meaning of what everybody knows what open means. And if they don't know that, there's no amount of words that you're going to do any better with. I know when you open a door, you open a door. You open a can of beer, you've opened a can of beer. Huh? They don't know what it means. In that case, you better have them go back and open a few doors and a few cans of beer. And when they've got that done, they can come back to the Enlightenment intention. There's nothing mystical or hidden or deep about it. It's just open in that ordinary sense. That they are being open. Now that may be a little tricky for them. It's just like they leave their field of consciousness open to whatever may occur as a result of having the intention to directly experience the object of their enlightenment. You ever heard that from me before? Now, so this is just not something that's made up. It's because in the mind itself are all kinds of ideas, one way or the other. And the mind overlaps and sits in the ocean of the field of consciousness. It's filling the field of consciousness and overlaps the field of consciousness. When the mind finally becomes empty, or at least separated from the field of consciousness, then the enlightenment experience is possible. Now, as you know, many classic techniques try to empty the mind of its content so that they can have a deep experience of the truth. And this is correct. The question is, how is this mind to be emptied? There's two basic ways to empty it. One is to burn or dissolve away the contents of the mind, and the other is to separate the mind from the field of consciousness. So that the mind is over there, and the field of consciousness is here with you. Do you ever notice that sometimes you can have one thing in your mind, or you can have another thing in your mind? So the content of the mind can change. Because what you're doing is taking various parts of the mind and bringing it into the field of consciousness. Now, what if you brought a part of the mind that had nothing in it into the field of consciousness? Then you would have a blank mind. Some people feel that a blank mind is enlightenment. It is not enlightenment, it is not enlightenment, it is not enlightenment. Many people confuse having the void, or shunyata, or blank part of the mind overlapping the field of consciousness as the enlightened state. And it is not enlightenment, it is not enlightenment, it is not enlightenment, and I don't care who has told you otherwise, it is not. They are simply wrong. Yes, a blank mind filling the field of consciousness sometimes is it gives the probability of an enlightenment experience occurring is greatly increased than if the mind is full of things. And the mind is busy part of the mind is filling the field of consciousness. It's difficult to have an enlightenment experience. Therefore, many of the Buddhists have developed contemplating the void in order to try to get a blank mind. This is fine. In fact, in any reasonable period of time, it is very unlikely that you are going to empty the entire mind of all its content, dissolve it all away, so that there's nothing left in the mind at all. Therefore, in a reasonable period of time, the only remaining method that you can have enlightenment experiences is to take the mind and put it someplace else, leaving the field of consciousness empty. So the Buddhists were correct. The difference between Buddhism in essence and yoga is this difference. In yoga, what you're trying to do is dissolve the entire mind of its entire content out of existence so that there isn't no content to the mind at all. Niti. Yogash. Niti. Chitta vritti nirodha means where the mind no longer has any content. But the Buddhic technique is to take all the stuff that's in the mind and put it someplace else than the field of consciousness. So the field of consciousness is empty. The mind is lurking over in the distance, ready to strike. But in the meanwhile, you can have direct experience of truth while the mind is out of the scene. Literally out of the scene. There's nothing in it. So, by being open, you say, be open to whatever may occur in the mind, one is not trying to put something there to work with, and it tends to move the mind away, and if something does occur in the mind, then you have them communicate that to their partner. So that when it is understood or grasped or received by the partner, that part of the mind that is in the forefront will tend to dissolve away because it's been received. The in basket has been read. Now you can throw the paper away because the guy understands. He's gotten the message, throw that in the trash now. So in order to have an enlightenment experience, we focus on, for example, who they are, the individual themselves, the who-ness of themselves. And since that's constantly being brought to mind by the question itself, that part of the mind will not empty by moving it away because it's always being brought back into the field of consciousness. Since the mind is filled with thoughts of themselves, that part is still there. That part then is communicated to the partner, dissolved out of existence, and that part of the mind is pure and clean and empty. So anytime they try to experience who they are, that part of the mind is empty because that's what's being brought up, and there isn't anything to bring up anymore. Finally, eventually, it's all communicated out, and there isn't anything left in the outbasket. So now we have a blank mind on the subject of who they are. This is not enlightenment. Now we've set up the situation in which enlightenment can occur. Now the mind is blank on who they are. Who am I? Who am I? In the end, now that this situation is so, they can just intend to experience who they actually are, and the mind does not interpose itself, giving ideas and memories, conclusions and beliefs, traumas and otherwise, into their consciousness, and the only thing is left is them. Now, I've seen, unfortunately, people sit for hours in that state and still not experience themselves. What is to be done about it? There's almost nothing that can be done. Somewhere along the line, they will either experience directly who they are, or they won't. Now, there's things that affect it, and I'll talk to you about it another time, what affects it. But that they are now in the optimum situation where if they actually do experience who they are, it will be a direct experience because there's no longer any imposition of the mind. Sometimes perceptual activities will interpose themselves, like feelings and visualizations at this point, in the visualizations in the sense of pure light. People will often come up with this about this stage. Or they feel who they are, or they'll have a bright light. A bright light is not enlightenment. A bright light is a bright light. It's very nice. Huh? Nice to experience bright lights, but we weren't setting out to get bright light enlightenment. We wanted to experience who they are. When the experience comes, it is self-evident. So, when people are set into the technique and they're intending to experience who they are directly, finally the mind is gone, you have reached a very nice place. Now, all you have to do them is keep them there, and sooner or later, they will experience who they are. Mainly when they give up the simplicities of trying to see. It's almost, on every occasion, these people are still trying to see who they are. Who am I? Yeah. And about all you can do is dissuade them from trying to perceive it, because they're the perceiver. They're actually are identified with the perceiver at the moment, one who sees things, and so therefore they're trying to see. So what you do is try to give them to give that up and discover that they are the seer. And when they discover that they are the seer, then they'll de-identify with the seer and say, wait a minute, now I can't even see? You won't let me do that? What have I got left? Right? And then sometimes they'll have physiological troubles at this point. Pains, and they will get sick to their stomach, because now the truth is intimate. They try anything else will come up. Not willfully are they doing this. This is just subtle identifications. And these core states of being are now being separated out. And through no mechanism at all, through no process at all, and through having done absolutely nothing, they'll become enlightened. All the rest was to eliminate. All was jockeying. In the end, enlightenment is not a willful thing. In the end, it is a spontaneous event. And you cannot make it happen. All you can do is set up a situation where the probability is maximized. And the Enlightenment technique is designed to do that. Now the individual has to try to communicate what has occurred in his mind to his partner. And tomorrow I'll break that down for you and also discuss the partner's role in that activity, so that we can complete this discussion on the Enlightenment technique. There's a lot to understand in what I just got through telling you. You should have that so it's crystal clear in your own mind. So that you understand how this works, so that you can see why the technique has been set up the way it is. If you don't understand that, one, you'll not appreciate the great truth and power that is contained in this. And two, you'll be tempted to vary it into something else thinking, well, one way is as good as the other. Is this Yogesh little thing? Huh? And you think of it that way. Well, I heard this one day, and so now I'm doing something similar to that, and we'll call it an illumination intensive or something. And people drift off, and the power of it just goes right down till you end up with some ordinary activity. So tomorrow we'll get into the last part of it, but I don't want to foreshorten anything here. I want to beat this to death so that you understand this material and the whys and the wherefores of it.